Good morning, everyone, and welcome to AmeriCollect's webinar on Credit Bureau Reporting. My name is Joe Moretti, and I'm part of the business development team here at the ridiculously nice collection agency, AmeriCollect. I am happy to be your moderator for today's session, and I do have the pleasure of introducing Kenlyn Gretz. But before I do, I'd like to show you how to ask questions during the session. On the right-hand side of your screen, there's an area that you can type out questions if you should have any during the webinar. If we do not get to them, we will follow up afterwards to answer any questions that do come up. I will try to interject these questions if we do have time, but without further ado, Kenlyn Gretz is the President and CEO here at AmeriCollect. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the webinar. Welcome, Kenlyn.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe, so much, and welcome to everybody, all of our clients and others that are not clients to this beautiful webinar. Joe, a reminder, your mother is expecting something on Sunday. It's Mother's Day. No last-minute scrambling. So, hey, let me get started a little bit. Credit Bureau reporting. So there's a new law that requires us that when we are submitting accounts to the credit file on your behalf, to have either a guarantor social security number or date of birth. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. There's actually more to the law than that, but that's the headline. So we'll talk a little bit about that. AmeriCollect, ridiculously nice collections. We are trying so hard to change how collections agencies are viewed, and we do that by being ridiculously nice on every single phone call. So let me move on with the presentation. So we're talking a little bit about this new law, but I also want to cover a little bit about the Credit Bureau also. So the New York Attorney General, what they did is they signed a settlement agreement with the three major credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. It was signed in 2015, but the lawsuit started in 2014. And what the Attorney General saw was that consumers were not having accurate credit files. And one of the components of it was that he wanted healthcare providers, and I'm using the word healthcare providers. This wasn't just targeting healthcare providers. It's every kind of what they call data furnisher. If you are a bank or a credit, so but I'm saying healthcare providers because that's who we work with, is we're 100% healthcare. So they're saying that we have to have the guarantor social security number or date of birth before they'll accept an account to the credit file. And there's a few more things we're going to talk about, but that's the basis of today's presentation. But a little step back, the Fair Credit Reporting Act is what allows medical providers to put things on consumers' credit file. And so the FCRA has been around for a long time. It's a good law. It really controls credit furnishers, data furnishers, and credit reporting agencies, and how consumers have rights to sort of clean up or fix their credit file if something is wrong. So that's the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Medical providers in general do not list accounts directly on the consumer's credit file. They use a collection agency like AmeriCollect to do that on their behalf. I know of actually zero, so I put 99.9, but I know of not like a bank. I mean, a bank extends a loan to someone. When they extend that loan, they also update the credit file with every payment, handle all of the disputes, things like that. It's a decent amount of work, but collection agencies have taken on that role for you as part of a service. So it's really, when I think about the credit report and reporting to the credit bureau about a delinquent payment or a non-payer, it's really kind of the only tool that medical providers have to influence payment of their accounts. I mean, most of you don't refuse services because someone hasn't paid in full. And if you're a not-for-profit hospital, EMTALA says that you have to see them, at least in the emergency room. So, but I mean, generally speaking, if someone has a collection account, you don't not see them. So when I think about a tool for payment that's in the mind of the consumer, it's really, that the account's going to go in their credit file. I often thought if medical providers stopped using a collection agency or stopped reporting as a tool of the collection agency, eventually that medical provider would become a magnet to the non-paying. And I think that that's really important to understand. I have an example. About 3 years ago, I talked to an agency at a conference, and he was complaining to me about how he didn't like all the rules with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, having to respond to disputes, the potential for lawsuits, those kinds of things, right? And so the interesting thing about it was he said, you know what, I did a test. I said, well, what was your test? And he said, well, for 6 months, I stopped reporting to the credit file, and it never affected our liquidation rate. We collected the same amount of money, and we stopped reporting to the credit file. I looked at the guy, and I said, well, here's what the problem with your test is it's not long enough. You need at least a 5-year or 4-year test, and here's the reason why. It's the perception that the consumer has that it's still going to affect their credit file. And in fact, most consumers, when they hear collection agency, they immediately think, oh my God, this is going to affect my credit score. And so his test was too short. And that's the question that I have, is that, so if this is the only tool that medical providers have to differentiate themselves and as a tool to sort of affect the consumer to say, I need to pay my bill or it's going to affect my credit score beyond my credit report, that's a mindset that consumers, they just think that it has. And so how do I know this though? So we use Call Miner, which is a speech analytics. So all of our calls are recorded. Every night those calls get flowed up to Call Miner. They convert the speech to text. Here's what we found out, that the words credit bureau, credit score, credit file, show up in about 40% of our calls. That means that either the patient or the guarantor is bringing it up or our collectors are bringing it up. And it's an effective tool. When a consumer knows that they're leveraging their future life, not life, but their future state, they want to get that house someday. They want to get that new car loan. It's an effective tool. You take that out of 40% of the calls, and boy, what does that do to medical providers? You know, so many people think that the medical bill itself is not that important. Now, if you take away the effect of credit bureau reporting, people are going to say, you know, why should I pay that hospital? Why should I pay that doctor's office? Real important. If you remove that conversation, we can't talk about credit reporting, and we have to disclose what's true. So if a consumer asks us, if there's a medical provider that we represent that doesn't allow us to put on the credit file, and the consumer asks, is this going to go on my credit file? Well, we have to say the truth. And no, it's not going to go on your credit file. What incentive do they have to pay that bill? Most providers don't refuse them treatment. So we see that. 35% of our inbound phone calls are calls because somebody looked at their credit file or received a notification that there's an account on their credit file. And so we tag those phone calls. The 800 number that we put on a credit file is a different 800 number. So we know from an inbound standpoint, either they called off of that 800 number or the call was about, hey, I found something on my credit file. So that's an interesting. So I guess my point here is general, just to say, hey, I want to make sure that we collect more money for you nicely. In fact, ridiculously nicely. That's the goal. And, you know, do I think that putting someone's account on the wrong person's credit file is nice? No, it's definitely not nice. And so that's what this law is about. It's not a bad law. It's a good law. It was needed. So we've got to make sure that we are actually populating the right consumer's credit file with the right account and not the wrong person's. And the date of birth and social security number help us do that. Here's just a screenshot of the settlement agreement. That was along with the attachments. It's 40-some pages long. What I would suggest doing as a medical provider, if you open up that document, if you want to get to the meat of what affects you, search for the word insurance or medical, and you'll get to the points of the document where we're at. Like again, that settlement agreement encompassed all data furnishers, all credit grantors. But again, Mr. Schneiderman, a good guy, he has the right. The settlement is causing good things to happen. Again, it's the three major credit reporting agencies. An accurate credit file. Who doesn't want an accurate credit file? A little history. How we send that data to the credit reporting agency is called a Metro 2 file. It's a standard. It's the specs in that document is over 306 pages long. It's a complicated. If you've ever had to look at the specs of a HIPAA compliant file, whether it's an 835 or a 270, 271, it's that confusing. It's like reading Oh, it's not like reading anything, really. It's confusing. So the Metro 1 file was the first file, then they went to Metro 2, and I'll say this about the credit reporting agency. The credit reporting agency, in my mind, or the Consumer Data Industry Association, they developed Metro 2 and kind of left it sit and never really made it what it could have been. I'll give you an example. John Smith. We have an account for John Smith. We have no date of birth, no social security number, and we send that off to the credit file. We don't get a confirmation back that they matched it to a specific credit file. We don't get a control number back from the credit bureaus. It's a one-way communication, and we just sort of shove off our account. And that's in kind of what's happening. But through this agreement, things are evolving. Credit reporting agencies are taking a more proactive approach to help us realize that we maybe have the wrong consumer or the right consumer. Imagine Mary Klein. Imagine Mary Klein. Mary's single. She's 23 years old. She gets married, becomes Mary Barker. She married some Barker guy, right? And then she goes through a divorce or maybe gets remarried again. For females, it's very possible that Mary, the same Mary, it's very possible that she might have 3 different credit files out there underneath 3 different names. That's why this settlement agreement was drafted, was to make sure that we're populating the right consumers, the right Mary, no matter what last name she's using now. It also helps with identity theft. There's lots of good things. So what do I need from you? I need the guarantor, not the patient. Well, I need the patients too. That's super helpful, so don't get me wrong there. I need one or the other, but I would love both. The date of birth of the Social Security number. That's really important for us so that we can generate an accurate, and it's your benefit too. You know, sometimes you don't realize this, but about 7 years ago, we used to be able to put on the credit file the name of your medical facility. Back then, if I put ABC Hospital on the credit file, you would get some of the phone calls. They wouldn't call me, they would call you. Well, the law said that for the patient's privacy, and so that someone doesn't unfairly judge them for creditworthiness, it now just says medical account. It doesn't specifically say who they owe. Now, there's pros and cons to that because the consumer should be able to know who they owe money to. And some reports actually do disclose to the actual consumer who the credit grantor is, whether it's a hospital. But so we get a lot of these phone calls when there's a mistake on the credit file, and we fix them. But it would certainly decrease those phone calls, make happier consumers if we had the right date of birth and the right Social Security number on the right consumer's account. Makes pretty good sense. So what do I need from you? Well, I think it's really important for me to educate you and you to educate your staff. We'll talk a little bit more deeply about that. Maybe you might want to update your forms, your admissions agreements, your whatever you're calling them, your intake forms, to ask for the guarantor date of birth and Social Security number. So often we're very patient-focused when we really do the collections from the guarantor. And then the data files that you send us, those will be needed to updated, and then update us with what additional data may you have found or added to the individual file. So patient access, patient scheduling, it's real important to update them on why it's important for them to ask for the date of birth and Social Security number. So I came up with some little scripting here. For your privacy, what's your date of birth? And so you might get some pushback. What do you need that for? I'm not the patient. The guarantor might say, Crabby Joe, let's call him. Good question. We want to make sure that if somebody calls in to check on your son's account, that we can verify that they are really you. So what is your date of birth? It's for your protection. And they might offer up their date of birth. And then you ask for another bit of data. And your Social Security number? Now, I'll stop a little here and talk a little bit about scripting. First off, it's important for patient access to understand that this is in the guarantor's best interest, because we want to make sure that we get the account on their credit file. Now, that's kind of negative, but you also want to make sure that it's for their protection so that when someone calls in that they're not trying to do medical identity theft. It really is what somebody could easily call in and find out about a son's date of birth or their account. The scripting that we have here is typical AmeriCollect, ridiculously nice scripting, for your privacy. We explain the benefit to the consumer first, then ask the question. benefit first. For your privacy, what is your date of birth? And of course, you're always going to get objections from a few people, and then compliment them. Good question. Then explain a little bit deeper on why we're asking if they don't get the connection from your privacy. We want to make sure that if somebody calls in to check on your son's account, we can verify that they're really you. So what is your date of birth? When I repeat the question, so what is your date of birth? That's a technique we at AmeriCollects call answer, fire back. So you ask a question, you get an objection, you answer the question again and fire the same question back, but maybe adding a few more things to it. It's for your protection. And then make a simple statement. That's real important to do. The scripting and the style of communication with a patient is really the backbone of ridiculously nice collections. Showing the benefit first, knowing that you're going to get some objections. It's okay. Good question. And then follow it up with the home run and your Social Security number. It's an assumptive way to ask for things. If you're face-to-face and you're training patient access, patient schedulers at a front desk situation, when they ask those questions, for your privacy, what is your date of birth? They should put their head down and their fingers to the keyboard right at that moment and pretend and assume that they're going to be getting that date of birth. It's real important to make sure that you assume that you're going to get that information. So, but more importantly, patient access has to understand that it's for the organization's benefit. We put the right account on the right consumer's credit file. That's why we need their date of birth and Social Security. It's for the patient and the guarantor's privacy so that nobody tries to steal their medical identity, and that we can validate that it's them that when they call in. You know, you're going to get some pushback. I'm not sure I want to give that information. You're not going to get it every single time. So you might have one last step at it or swing at the bat. I can understand, but actually giving it out to an organization you trust, like our hospital, is going to protect your data more than not giving it out. That's how other people can get your information. It's kind of like a combination lock. You only give that combination lock to people that you know, and that's important. Now, moving on to the other parts of this, so you need to add the guarantor's date of birth and Social Security number. Patient access changes there will help with that, there's no doubt. And then how do you get that to our office? So hopefully you have a field in your system for guarantor date of birth and guarantor Social Security number. So some of our clients in their systems, they have a flag that says the patient is the guarantor. So that's a solution. You can also add the guarantor date of birth or Social Security number, either way. If you want to know what % of your guarantors come with a date of birth or Social Security number, let us know. You can just email newbusiness@AmeriCollect, and what we'll do is we'll run some reports for you to see how big of an issue is this for you. Maybe you're getting it 90% of the time, and it's not that big of an issue. So we can do that research for you. Just email and then put on the top Credit Bureau webinar and then ask the question, can you tell me what % of our guarantors have a date of birth or Social Security number? And maybe if you're not even sure what's in the data file that you're sending us, that's easy for us to check. You shouldn't have to do the digging on that. We'll do the digging for you to see what's in your file. So that's an easy way. And then once you update your data file, maybe there's not a need. If there is a need, you might add some additional fields to the data file where you place the new counts with our office. That's a way to do it. We'll also are accepting backloads. So if you know that you've had a problem where you weren't giving it to us, we can go back, give you the guarantor number. You can give us a file of all of the guarantors that we have. We'll load it to our system and then repopulate the credit file with the correct and accurate information. So all of these steps are easy for us to do. When? The due date is July 17th. So if we don't have a date of birth or a Social Security number, at the time the account is listed, it means we can't send it to the credit file. But later, if during a conversation with the consumer, we get the date of birth or the Social Security number, then we can send it. So it's not an end-all, but boy, I do expect our collections to decrease. I expect our collections to decrease a little for those clients who don't give us a lot of date of birth and Social Security numbers. Because ultimately, the beauty of the credit file is this. Consumers that want to pick up the phone and want to talk with us are probably payers. Consumers that don't pick up the phone or don't return phone calls don't pay us until they need something. okay? So when they need something, they go for a loan, they're denied because there's an account for AmeriCollect on their credit file. For those consumers that don't have dates of birth and social security numbers, or those consumers, we're not going to have it on their credit file. So like I said, we might not say an immediate effect, it's going to be a longer down the road effect. So that's it regarding that section of the agreement. There's two other items that are involved, or actually three. Insurance payments and processing. The New York Attorney General addressed the issue of a consumer having accounts on their credit file when the insurance should have paid them. And there's three things that they've done with this. So insurance should have paid. They didn't pay. It got listed to a collection agency, or maybe the consumer never even gave you the insurance. A guarantor receives a collection agency letter or a phone call from us, and then they give us the insurance information. We see it quite often. The consumer somehow assumes that you have all the insurance information, especially if you're a radiology, anesthesiology, pathology. When you have separate systems, they don't always communicate effectively with each other, or at the time that the radiologist gets the information regarding the patient and the guarantor, maybe there was no insurance information. It regularly happens. You know, patients need some engagement here too. They get 3 or 4 statements from the medical provider, never respond to it, don't see any insurance payments, and all of a sudden they get a collection agency letter or a phone call from us, and they give us the insurance card. It's human nature. I don't know how we change that one, but that's what they're trying to address here. These accounts should not penalize a consumer who didn't do what they were supposed to do, or the opposite of the case, it was filed with the insurance company drags their feet in making payment, and then the account still gets listed. You know, we all know you want to collect from the insurance company, and providers are doing everything that they can to try to collect it before it gets to us, but it happens. And we as a collection agency, you know, I'll explain to you what the law is. The law says that credit reporting agencies shall instruct collection furnishers, that's AmeriCollect, to use the Metro 2 special comment code of BP for debts that they identify as paid by the insurance, or AB, being paid by insurance. And we're going to hit on those in a little bit, to remove or suppress medical. So that means that it's not going to hit their credit file. So real important. So what's the change? We have to submit this code, AB being paid through insurance. So how do we know insurance is processing? Well, it's easy when we have contact with the consumer and he says, oh, here's my insurance card. We just enter the comment code in through a quick click of a button. Or a consumer might contact you, the medical provider, and give you the insurance information. In that aspect, maybe 50% of our clients are good at telling us, oh, by the way, we're rebilling this. We need you to get better. We need you to get better because now the law says that we have to update the credit file when we know that you're rebilling insurance. So that's real important. So we've got to come up with a systematic way for you to say, hey, this account is in collections. The consumer called us, and now we're rebilling it with the insurance. What happens if the insurance denies? You need to let us know that too. We'll remove the code. So this is something that you're going to want to work with our organization on how best to have this communication. Some client systems have very good ways of doing this. Other client systems, it's a little bit clunky. We can work with you on special ideas on how to solve this issue, making sure that we're reporting what's true and accurate, that it's being processed by the insurance company, something that we can work with you individually on. So what you need to do is you need to educate your staff. Oftentimes, they might not know that they need to let us know that you're rebilling the insurance on a particular account. Now, the best way is to have an automated file that comes to us on a daily basis. Here's all of the accounts that were in collection and now are being rebilled by insurance. That's the best way to do it. And then we can handle the follow-up in particular to make sure the insurance paid. We're regularly doing that right now. So that's what we need your help doing, is to help us get that code correctly, that it's in the process of being paid by insurance. The other one is it paid by the insurance, paid through insurance? Now that one, you notify us when the insurance company pays. We call it a pay direct file, paid directly to the medical provider. You give us that information already. You give us the dollar amount, you give us an adjustment code of how much the insurance took for an adjustment. So this is all insurance, whether it's Medicaid, Medicare, any type of VA. So insurance is defined very broadly here. So any third-party payer is real important. So if it's on collection and it's on the consumer's credit file, we've got to make an informational note, a comment code that says it's being paid, it was paid through insurance. Now, I wish I was involved with the settlement agreement because they don't define what paid means. Does that mean the full balance was paid or any portion of it? It wasn't well thought out. And so some of these details haven't even been communicated back to collection agencies. At this point, what we're going to be doing is we're going to, if there's an account that's listed and it's not on the credit file, and we find out that there's insurance, we're not going to report it until after the insurance pays or denies. We think that that's the right way to treat consumers, and it's ridiculously nice. Now, those accounts that are already on the consumer's credit file, we're going to report the other code, AB, that it's being processed. And then if the insurance pays a portion, we're going to report it as paid by insurance, even if they apply 100% of it to deductible, because the insurance process claim. So we're thinking of this much sort of, what's the intent? The intent is to say, yeah, the balance is owed, but it wasn't processed correctly the first time, or maybe immediately. So those are what we're looking at. So how do you help us with this? Many of you give us payment files that just say the dollar amount and the date of the payment and your account number for the particular date of service. We may need you to add your payment type codes to it and give us a table. We'll build that into our process. You really just need to add the code or a descriptor, and then we'll build the process to say, oh, this was an insurance payment. We'll be able to separate whether it's a credit card payment, whether Medicaid paid, or personal payment, Humana, or whoever. That's what we need your help, is making sure that your PayDirect file. Now, if you're not sure what's in your PayDirect file, again, email newbusiness@americollect.com, and we'll help you with that. So that's one way to solve it. Another way to solve it is simply to give us a query of all of your payments and adjustments in a file on a daily basis, and we'll match it up to our system to make sure that we know which ones were insurance payments or not. So those are individual solutions that we can work with you on individually. So the AB, the P, the BP are the two solutions. The third thing is this: medical collections. What it does, the new settlement agreement says that we cannot report to the credit file for at least 180 days prior to the date of first delinquency. Now, this is something that doesn't involve you. We'll handle this on our own. So each account, it's got to be 180 days from date of first delinquency. Most of our medical providers that we represent believe that the payment is due in full within 30 days from the date it went self-pay. So we calculate on that on our end already. So the date it went self-pay, 30 days from that is when is the first delinquency. So we're handling this on our, the good part about this is that if there is an account that slips to collection, typically for most of our clients, we don't put it on the credit file for 60 days, some 120, some 90. It's up to the individual creditor what they want. We're now talking 180 days. Now that's a long time, though, for a consumer to give them to determine whether the insurance paid. We see most of our clients listing at accounts at day 90. We're adding 60 days to that, so that's 150 days. Some are listing them at 120 days. So we're really at that 180 already, so we don't see this as a big change here. Again, and our policy is if someone calls up and says, oh, I had insurance, we postpone putting it on the credit file to give them the benefit of the doubt. So 180 days. That is the conclusion. I know we're a little bit over time here. We're right at 11:01. So there's going to be a lot of individual questions, and I'm wondering, Joe, if we're better off just having them either email you or write a comment on or email me too. I'll give you my email address. It's kenlin@americollect.com. And I think it's important that you individually tackle these questions about, are you giving us the right data and not? So very important. Our next webinar coming up is to reduce your mail returns. We did this one about 3 or 4 years ago. We've updated it. Learn how to decrease your mail returns during patient access and with the help of your notice or statement vendor. We recently changed statement vendors, and I can tell you it was a great process. We learned a lot about how we can improve, and we want to share some of those things with you to decrease, if the patient doesn't get the bill, you don't get paid, right? Thursday, June 29th, and don't forget, it's Mother's Day tomorrow. One thing that I just got to share with you, for the last 8 or so years, we have this Mother's Day week, and what we do is we have our coworkers fill out a survey about questions about their mom, and then we pick like 4 winners, and the mothers get roses on Mother's Day. It's kind of fun. Like one of the questions I have right here. What is the best lesson you learned from your mom that you'll remember forever? And then the other survey question is if you could tell the world one thing about your mother, what would you say? And the last one is, what is your fondest memory of you and your mom? So what we do is we create a letter that comes from AmeriCollect, and we send it to mom so that she gets it on Saturday before Mother's Day. And it's kind of a neat deal. And then again, a couple of lucky mothers get some roses sent to them. Joe, did you fill one out for your mom?
You bet.
Joe? All right, good job. She'll be impressed. Hey, AmeriCollect, thanks you for being here. We're ridiculously nice, and not only that, we're successful too. It's 8-time winner of the Inc. magazine's fastest privately growing companies. 8 years in a row. We've got slow and steady growth happening to us, and we want to continue that. We're not growing too quick, just the right speed. Thanks to Joe and his hard work with reaching out to clients. And 8-time winner of best places to work in culture in collections. And we should find out by the middle of June if we made it to the list for the 2016 year or 2017 year. So excited about that. Our culture is good. We're treating consumers the right way, and we're helping our clients collect as much money as possible. Thank you so much. Enjoy the weekend, and happy Mother's Day, Mom.